All right,
I'm really not hearing anything you're saying.
we're just getting started.
Ms. Wagner, can you hear me?
I can now. When you speak very loudly, I can.
This is Jack Cloud. I've got to establish a couple things for the record in order for you to participate electronically.
Yes.
One, would you state the reason for participating today electronically?
Yes, I had an emergency. My son-in-law is in critical condition, and they don't expect him to live. And I'm out of town.
And where are you participating from?
Hospital is Jamaica Hospital Medical Center in Jamaica,
New York City, or in New York City?
I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, are you in New York?
Yes, I'm in New York, yes.
All right, if somebody will make a motion to allow Ms. Wagner to participate in this meeting electronically, then we have to have a vote on it.
I'll allow Board Member Ms. Von Wagner to participate electronically from New York.
All right, moved by Reverend Haywood. That was second.
I second that.
Any further discussion? Ms. Banks, if you call the roll, please.
Yes. Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Dr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Reverend Haywood?
Aye.
Dr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye. All right, Ms. Wagner, if you just hang on and.
I feel it's kind of noisy here. I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry, say it again?
We just have to tell her that we went through the vote.
Yes. Yeah. So we voted to allow you to participate. Can you hear us okay?
It's very faint. I heard you said something about allowing me to participate.
Okay, well, just hold on and we'll do the best we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Banks, could you sit next to the phone, please, so that you can coach her through where we are at this point, please? Thank you.
All right, so welcome. Today we have a busy day. It's our work session day, also annual meeting, and we'll also be doing a swearing in at the conclusion of the work session. We decided as a board over the last couple of months that we would spend some time this summer working together on a variety of items on the agenda today after we do the organizational meeting. And during the organizational meeting, we'll just affirm our meeting schedule in terms of first and third Wednesdays for the year. Dr. Boone, if there's a designee for an individual who would serve in your capacity in the event of your absence, we would just have you to designate that person. We're required to do that. And then we'll have a short, at least I think it'll be a short executive session where we'll deal with personnel and a legal matter. We'll then come out of executive session and then just proceed with the work session agenda as printed. With that said, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Dr. Boone, and she will lead us through our organizational meeting in terms of election for chair.
Good afternoon. Nominations are open for the office of Board Chair of the Norfolk Public Schools. Ms. Basine?
I'd like to nominate Rodney Jordan to continue as our board chairman.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
It has been moved and properly seconded that Rodney Jordan continue as chair of the board. Are there other nominations? Then without objection, nominations are now closed for the office of board chair. I call for a motion to suspend the rules and elect by acclamation.
I move that we suspend the rules for election of board chair and elect by acclamation.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed state no. The ayes have it, and the motion is carried. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn the meeting over to you, and congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you to the board for allowing me to serve in this capacity for another year. I'll now open up the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Can I nominate Noel Gabriel?
Okay, has been nominated at Noel Gabriel for vice chair. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Any other nominations? Okay. Hearing none, I will close the nominations for vice chair. You want to share your script you have with me over there? Then I will also call for a motion to suspend the rules and elect by acclamation. Do I have a motion to that effect?
A motion to suspend the rules and elect by acclamation.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. All those opposed? By acclamation, never mind. Okay, so Dr. Noel Gabriel will serve as our vice chair. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
With that, in terms of affirming our schedule, we have been meeting on first and third Wednesdays, generally speaking, with our work sessions on the first Wednesday and our business meeting on the third Wednesdays. We've talked earlier about some hybrid and elongated meetings we'll do during the summer. But as far as our general schedule, is everyone comfortable and accepting of staying on that schedule? Okay. So we will continue with that schedule, and we will have at our business meeting the schedule for the year that will show that. Also, Dr. Boone, do you have a designee of someone who would serve in your absence in the event that you're unable to attend the meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would have Dr. Kip Rogers, Chief Academic Officer, serve in my stead.
So if it's the will of the board, we'll accept that Dr. Boone has designated Dr. Kip Rogers to serve in her stead in the event that she's unable to attend any of our meetings. Everyone okay with that? All right, with that, I'm going to close the organizational meeting at this time. What we will do is entertain a motion to go into executive session, and then following executive session, we'll come back and continue with our work session. The board is going to move over into the principal's conference room for a closed session. So I have a motion for us to enter into a closed executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into closed executive chair of session.
Have a second?
I second.
Okay. Ms. Banks, please read and call the roll.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the school board, superintendent, and council go into closed session for the purposes which are set out in subsection A of section 2.2-3711 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended for the discussion or consideration of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of the Norfolk Public Schools, including consideration of the personnel docket of this date. Ms. Basine?
Before you read, can you also include on that update on legal matters?
As well as discussion and consultation with legal counsel on specific matters. Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Dr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Reverend Haywood?
Aye.
Dr. Robinson?
Aye.
Ms. Wagner?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye. All right, we will adjourn to close the executive session. All right, welcome back to our work session. Ms. Wagner is won't be participating with us for the rest of the work session this afternoon. Two matters just want to take care of before we proceed with the rest of the work session. First, I'd like to entertain a motion for the approval of the personnel docket for July 6, 2016.
I move that we approve the personnel docket of July 6, 2016.
Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Any further discussion on the personnel docket? All right, Ms. Banks, if you call the roll, please.
Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Dr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Reverend Haywood?
Aye.
Dr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye. Also like to entertain a motion to reappoint Janelle Banks as clerk of the school board. Have a motion to that effect?
I move that we appoint, based on superintendent's recommendation, to reappoint Ms. Banks as a school board clerk.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, Ms. Banks, will you call the roll, please?
Thank you. Ms. Basine?
Aye.
Ms. Doyle?
Aye.
Dr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Reverend Haywood?
Aye.
Dr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Jordan?
Aye. All right, next week, on the agenda, and as we talked about, getting into having more conversations as a board and as a governance team over the summer. We've also talked about data and process and having data and information inform us as we work on a variety of things moving forward, including our upcoming goals for the years and objectives and so forth. What we're going to start off with is Dr. Boone giving us a update on her entry plan, and within that entry plan, she's also going to describe some other areas of focus. And so what we'll do now is just allow her to go through that presentation, and then as a board, we can continue our conversations that we've said we wanted to have around some areas of importance and focus for the board. Again, at the last meeting, we laid out a schedule with some topic areas and focus areas we wanted to touch on throughout the summer. We're still doing that, but this gives us an opportunity to frame it in terms of work that Dr. Boone has done with this update. And from there, we'll open up the floor after she finishes. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. As I worked on this, and each board member should have a hard copy. As I worked on this, I realized that there's been an attempt, put it on me, to accomplish 12 months in 7 months. And so it has been a fast-paced opportunity, but again, I think we've had some early wins. We've moved the needle on a number of things, and there's obviously a great deal more work to be done. But I think hopefully my intent in this report this afternoon is to pick up from what I had said to the board would occur in the 100 days from January, and so this is our opportunity to do that. The board will recall this slide where it said the next 100 days. We're building the Norfolk Public Schools redesign, the MPS redesign, and that's about our student achievement, our approach to teaching and learning, our results, our climate and culture. It's about who we are as a school district. And so we've embarked on a redesign model for this district. And throughout all of this, we will never stop listening, learning, connecting, aligning, and creating systems for effectiveness. As part of the work we'll be doing with Cabinet, Dr. Rogers and I have talked about it, this is where we begin to create our new brand, if you will. But it really is about how we do business in an effective way, that we reach our issues, we improve our practices, we create and improve systems that exist so that we can be very much a high-performing organization, and high-performing organizations get great results. The entry plan, when I presented to the board in January, I talked about listening, learning, and connecting. Just want to give you a sampling of some of the things that have occurred since that meeting in January to address what we're accomplishing. with teachers. We've surveyed teachers around their thoughts for the revised lesson plan process and template. We surveyed teachers regarding the school calendar, the 2016-17 school calendar. I've been fortunate enough to engage in one-on-one conversations with many teachers across the district, converse with teachers through classroom visits, and an ongoing and very active set of meetings and collaborations with both the Education Association of Norfolk and the Norfolk Federation of Teachers. So that has gotten off to a really good start and something that is ongoing and very active. I should have flipped and had students first, simply because I say that our work is about the students at the center of this of the work. And so in spending time with students, I've done it through classroom visits and any number of programs and activities where I have an opportunity to talk with teachers and talk with students, such as co-curricular activities such as Battle of the Books. We've done that. The Little Feet Meet gave me a chance to meet both with parents, teachers, and students and participate and have fun. Dr. James Mitchell and I weren't successful with 3 elementary students who could manage the ball much better than we could at Little Feet Meet. But we were having a great time. The opportunity to read to groups of students and in classrooms, in schools. The variety of athletic competitions. You know, we've had a great year with our athletics, and we've had teams that have gone on to postseason play and had really represented Norfolk Public Schools very well. And so that gave me an opportunity to interact with the students, and I'll see students now and they'll remind me where I know them from, where I've met them. They'll say, I'm on the basketball team, or I'm on the football team. Small conversations, small group conversations with students. Dr. Rogers and I participated in the Rotary Club, Downtown Norfolk Rotary Club event for their scholarship and internship and mentoring program. And it was wonderful. You may have seen me at graduations a couple times hug a few kids, and you probably wonder how she knows them. Those were some of the students that I met at the scholarship event, and one that I declare is my daughter's twin. But she's just a little bit taller, and she desires to be a pediatrician. The 200-plus Scholars Breakfast, where Booker T. Washington also brought underclassmen to that and had a chance to talk with those students as well. Parents are the integral part of this, and so we take all opportunities to speak with parents. Norfolk Council of PTA meetings and events, one-on-one conversations I've had with parents, and community and civic league meetings. I've noticed that in those opportunities where I was meeting with the civic lead or a community meeting, there were often a number of parents that were there. And you'll see me talk about community organization interface going forward. Principals, our generals on the front line, our teachers are the lieutenants. And so it is important to spend time with them to help understand their current journey in Norfolk Public Schools and help us frame this work and how we redesign the district. Lots of time spent with principals through school visits, the monthly principal meetings. I too participated in professional development that we established for the principals because, again, we're building a system, we're building an opportunity to be successful, and it's important for my message around teaching and learning and expectations be a part of that. So I do participate in professional development, had spent some time in Williamsburg recently, the School University Research Network, where we had central office administrators, we had principals, and great conversations. We had our own team time, actually, in that we had an hour where we could debrief and talk about next steps. And as a result of that, we will be engaging people who were part of CERN in our planning for our upcoming Leadership Institute. So we're very pleased about that work. I meet monthly with the Elementary School Principals Association representatives, and about quarterly with the Secondary Principals Association. And we get to, again, have some deeper conversations about policies, practices, procedures, true needs, and the vision. I obviously can't do this work in isolation, so working with City Council and the mayor, both through individual conversations as well as I was very fortunate to have meetings with the City Council and mayor candidates during that time. The board was present when I made remarks to at the City Council budget hearing. And of course, the interface with council and the mayor through the 2 groundbreakings that we had for both Larchmont and Ocean View. My work with the city manager is very strong and ongoing, and then that expands to the work that I've done with deputy city attorneys and the associated staff of those deputy city attorneys, and particularly around issues of economic development and neighborhood revitalization and the impacts that has on our schools. So I'm, like I said, very excited about the relationship with city leadership and staff. Also had a really great meeting with the Norfolk Public Library Director and the chair of the Norfolk Public Library as a partner with our work. Continuing one-on-one conversations with our legislative delegation, and we're about to have a shift with the election and the inauguration of Mayor Alexander, and so we'll certainly be reaching out through that process also. The higher education meetings have been very beneficial and very rewarding. Had meetings and discussions about continued collaborations with higher ed, as well as establishing some new collaborations. Couple of different meetings with the deans of the schools of education at Old Dominion University, William & Mary, and Regent University. We're also in significant discussions with Tidewater Community College, the president, and her senior administrative team, and that's beginning to bear a lot of great fruit. I enjoy my time with students, and I enjoy my time, I must say it, and I'm sorry to the board, but I enjoy my time with students the most. And I truly enjoy my time with community organizations and events. So I've said to the board, and I've said this publicly as I've made remarks, that the community never left Norfolk Public Schools. Norfolk Public Schools disengaged with the community. Significant amount of my time has been spent in the re-engagement of the schools with the community, because they are wonderful organizations and partners who stand ready to assist us. The establishment of the Department of Interagency Collaboration and Wraparound Services is already gaining us some leverage, both with the military community and with other community organizations, where things that have kind of been treading water for a while, we've now been able to move forward. And that is not, remind the board, that's not a partnership position. That really is about how do we leverage resources to reach the outcomes that we have for student results. So I've, time with the YMCA, YWCA, I've been appointed to the United Way Board, serving on that, United for Children Executive Committee, the Hampton Roads Children of the Sun, American Heart Association, Norfolk Gaines, Communities in Schools of Hampton Roads, any Southside Coalition, just a sampling of many groups that I've had a chance to meet with since January. I just mentioned our military support and our Norfolk Public Schools presence in the military community, and that has been very rich and very rewarding. I had a wonderful meeting with the State Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Admiral Harvey, and he has acknowledged the changes that we are making in Norfolk Public Schools as it relates to our military families. Wonderful meeting and some collaborations that are planned with the CEO and the executive CEO of NAFTA Norfolk. And so that's going very well. Both Dr. Birdsong and Dr. Bailey were at a national conference last week to address the support of military children and families, and we were well represented, and I'll use what Dr. Birdsong shared with me, and they are very moved and overwhelmed by the support that's out there for Norfolk Public Schools as it relates to its military families. Of course, we and many of the board members were able to participate in the military convening, which was went very well. I think that came off And we built a lot of relationships and learned a lot of, I think the military learned a lot about Norfolk Public Schools, and we learned about military children and family needs. So that's gone well. The other areas that I, again, continue to meet with and build deeper relationships with in this first few months since January, ongoing work, meetings and interactions with the Greater Norfolk Corporation, the Hampton Roads Community Foundation, and Lead Hampton Roads. My conversations with the Secretary of Education, the State Superintendent, and the Virginia Department of Education have been very substantive conversations. Secretary Ann Holton was in to visit with me last week. Dr. Staples and I have had one-on-one phone calls, in-person meetings, and as well as meetings with other groups of superintendents that share some of the challenges that Norfolk may share. And so we do have a partner with the state, and we also have an open and listening ear as the state thinks about what they've termed improvement, and I say they need to be focused on turnaround, because improvement gets us to a number, turnaround gets us out of a place. And so we're really having those collaborative conversations and feel very much supported by the state. Same thing with the faith community. I can't tell you how rewarding and blessing the outreach from the faith community has been across all faiths and all sectors, and had an opportunity to meet with clergy groups, to participate in a variety of faith-based programs, and as well as one-on-one meetings with the various faith leaders in the community. So that leads to the variety of community events that I've attended since January. Martin Luther King Day celebration, when our students were recognized with the Mid-Atlantic Athletic Conference, the MEAC Conference, Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year dinner. And it was interesting because they had us seated at different tables, and I found myself seated with students who were in the Boys and Girls Club in Suffolk, so we had a chance to figure out how I knew them. So, but we had a number of students who were recognized and participated in the program that evening. Youth Mentors Conference, the Norfolk Botanical Gardens Heritage Celebration. Part of this time, of course, was the budget development, and I again want to acknowledge Dr. Thornton, who has moved on to be superintendent of Surrey Public Schools, and Ms. Rhonda Ingram, our executive director for budget at the time and acting CFO in this interim, for the work that they've done to help us bring forth a budget that, going back to that earlier work around alignment and systems, that helped us focus on the alignment and investment of resources to address teaching, learning, and results. I sit here as the board does. We didn't get everything that we had desired out of funding and for the budget. I think we made some great progress, and that's why my relationship with the city and the board's relationship with the city is so critical, given the work that we have to go forward. But I recognize I have to prove some things for them to want to invest more. Hopefully in these 7 months I've proved some things and they can get their pocketbooks open. I was teasing City Manager Jones recently at the grand opening of Croker Spot on 35th Street, and someone made the comment that everything that they needed, and even sometimes when they fell short of money, that they could find the city manager, and he made it happen. So as we were leaving the speaking portion of that event, we hugged each other and said hello. I said, now my hand is in your pocket, because they said when you fall short of money, we can come to you. So I put him on notice that I'm in his pocket now. My hands are in his pocket. Also, through the budget, we affected phase 1 of the central office reorganization. I will be coming forward to the board later this month with phase 2 of the reorganization. And as I mentioned earlier, we've established the Office of Interagency Collaboration and Wraparound Services and eliminated the Executive Director of School Improvement, because all of our schools need to improve, even if they've been fully accredited over time. We can certainly see the gaps and the needs that are there. And so all of our work is about school improvement and how do we advance the work going forward. The time has been spent also filling critical central office positions that were vacant when I arrived. The Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Michael Cataldo, has started with us. Executive Director of Human Resources, Mr. Billups, as well as the Senior Coordinator of English. And I'll talk and the board is aware that we have not filled the communications position yet, but interviews and that process are well underway. We finalized plans for the successful opening, and these go back to these last four are strategic goals that I had mentioned to the board and in the January presentation. And so we've now since finalized the process for the successful opening of both Richard Bowling and Southside STEM Academy at Compostela. I want to acknowledge Dr. Denise Charbonnet, Ms. Ingram, and all who are in facilities and purchasing who have been supportive of the design of the process and now implementation as we begin to transition into those two new schools. There's also the choice seat process that the board gave its approval of, and the marketing for applications and for students interested in seats in the Southside STEM Academy. That marketing went well. We had well over the number of students interested. Then we had seats, so we had held a lottery. We did the lottery in a public fashion, so there couldn't be anything but smooth sailing with our intent and our seriousness about making sure that students who were interested would have that opportunity. So that has started, and there's also even been a welcoming event planned and maybe one held for students who would be new to this Compostela community family. The fourth goal that we had, that I mentioned as strategic goals in those 100 or so days, reviewing and assessing our internal systems that foster support for schools, student achievement, and organizational effectiveness. So when I talk with the board later this month about the phase 2 of reorganization, we'll share where my thinking is with where we're headed. But want the board to know we're staying within the budget that has been approved. So I recognize I don't have a blank check, and I approach the reorganization that way. So that work is ongoing. So as I mentioned, the other strategic goals, the critical central office positions will be fully staffed by the end of the school year. We missed that by one position based on the 4 original that were critical positions when I arrived December 1st. We have not filled the Senior Director of Communications, and so that's going forward. We know since the presentation in January, we have a number of additional critical positions, Chief Financial and Operations Officer, as well as elementary and high school principals. The board approved the personnel recommendations last month for the elementary positions. Will be coming forth later this month to the board with recommendations for the high school principal position. So we're well on our way to making sure that any of the critical vacancies are filled in a way that we can look forward to a full staff at the beginning of the actual school year. Obviously, we're into the new school year, but by the time the school year begins late August, we're hoping and planning to have a full complement of staff within the administrative ranks. Engage key stakeholders from teachers, principals, central administration, higher ed, and others in the development of a district-wide literacy focus. I said to the board in January that we have a K-12 literacy issue. Someone, not a board member, asked, well, what about pre-K? I said, well, they are learning to read, so we aren't going to declare that they have a literacy challenge. It's how we bridge between pre-K to kindergarten and going forward. And so Dr. Rogers, Dr. Cataldo, and others have been continuing the work with the literacy committee or the work group that's in place, and that will have some expansion in next school year in terms of membership and focus. We've designed and implemented professional development for guided reading in grades K through 2. That was held this spring with very favorable comments from teachers and principals about that training. We will continue with grades 3 through 5 this fall. And we're also exploring a higher education partnership with the College of William and Mary around literacy and some focus that they have on literacy as the School of Education. Another strategic goal is to work with the Virginia Department of Education to design an effective set of turnaround practices for the district's priority and focus schools. From what the comments I made earlier about the relationship with the Secretary of Education and the state superintendent, we're definitely in partnership around how we build effective corrective action plans for our newly reconstituted schools. So we've had a active process. We've been able to talk about ways in which I envision school turnaround and the substance of those goals and objectives versus some things that the state has been given a nod yes to. It needed to be deeper for me. So we work very closely to move the needle on that, and pleased with the support and the shared conversations with the state on those. And so when those are finalized, I think we'll see a different planning tool, if you will, to help us be successful. And obviously, I end with the same way I began, and it's to focus on the whole child as we develop policies and procedures. All of this work is about the children. The adult support, the active learning of our children, and the operation of this district, but it's all about the children. So what happens going forward? You know, I am now starting my first full year as superintendent in Norfolk, so I no longer have to say 7 months ago or 2 months. I'm here. And going forward, this is something that I've been sharing both internally and with the community members as I speak. And I believe I've said this to maybe collectively to the board. I know individually as I've met with board members. Our formula for success in Norfolk Public Schools is a very straightforward and simple formula, but accomplishing it has many complex steps and stages. So going forward, we'll continue to focus on stability, and that's from we've had a board election, we have stability on the board. I'm starting my first full year, I count that as stability. Our central office players are in place, and, with the exception of, again, the principal assignments this year were based on retirements or departures. And so, and we've been very fortunate that our administrative pool has been very strong this year. Most of those positions have been internal appointments. And so those are folks who are hearing the conversations in the last 7 months and are ready to go forth and lead. So stability is one piece. The second piece is focus and alignment. What should we be paying attention to? And how will we align that work around us? What are the things that we need to scale up if we're gaining a great deal of success from? And what are the things that we need to stop doing where they become a distraction? And these are some of the conversations that I've had with the state in terms of what has been their compliance model for school improvement. And I still hold out hope and general excitement around the state's plan to address ESSA and some of the flexibilities that will be coming forward. It's interesting, though, states have to have their plans in place before we'll have federal guidance. So welcome to the inverse equation on that. But Virginia's doing some very significant work, some of which started before ESSA, and they are continuing that work going forward. And if we have the right focus and alignment, and we have stability in our leadership teams, then we can begin to get the results. And so, like I said, a lot of complexity under those three intertwined circles. But again, the formula is very clear. So when people ask, what's your vision for Norfolk Public Schools? Obviously, outstanding results. But it's about creating stability, creating a culture and a climate where parents want their children to be educated here, our staff and teachers and principals want to work here, our central office personnel, and with us working together, we can get those results. there's some, over the year, I keep a notebook that for each board meeting, and I take lots of notes during the board meetings. And as I've reviewed those notes and other conversations with the board, there are a few items that I see we also have to begin to add to. So you will notice, again, it's focusing the work. The literacy work will continue. Filling critical vacancies will continue. All of that work and creating effective systems will continue. But there are some focus areas that I believe, as a governance team, I've heard that we need to be interested in, and some that I've added there. So let me run you through my short but comprehensive list. And when I talk about doing 12 months and 7, I'm not sure how many years worth of work that this slide represents. But at any rate, here goes. Specialty program pipelines. We've talked a number of times about what does it look like when we build the next level of programming, and how do we do it in a way that we don't harm existing programming, and yet we have some true pathways. We just talked about the Southside STEM Academy at Camp Estella. What will be the opportunities for students who matriculated at school through 8th grade, and what are the choices that will be available to them based on their interest in STEM careers? Some will choose their comprehensive schools because, again, the STEM career, STEM is a way of thinking, it's not an activity. And so not all careers are in that STEM focus, but most of our careers going forward will have that basis and that background. So what will it look like for that? Another example, we've created the Academy of Discovery at Lakewood, which will have a middle year IB program for the grades 6 through 8. We have an existing IB program housed here at Granby High School that's at capacity, as well as the school is at capacity. So we haven't had a middle year program, and we've had students who've gone from elementary and middle school into the International Baccalaureate program. So how do we address the fact that we will have students coming from 2 paths into IB? Those who maybe there's an expectation, I don't know if we've fully delivered on that expectation, but in my thinking, we've kind of said, well, if you're successful with the middle year program, you may want to think about the high school IB. Not all will choose that. And then there are those who won't go through the middle years program, making sure they still have access to the IB program. What does it mean for our capacity for IB? Because, just simply replicating programs doesn't lead to great success or results, and we're aware of that. And so there's some serious conversations we have to have about pathways and what that looks like. So those are a couple of examples. We talked some through budget processes and other issues of school enrollment, attendance boundaries, and school assignment. We have our elementary schools, particularly once Larchmont and Ocean View open, will be in pretty good shape in terms of their capacity and enrollment. We got a couple places here and there. Our middle schools, we have some that are under enrolled, we have some that are at the capacity or over capacity in those school sites. And so, how do we address that? And the continued conversations around choice as we think about these pathways. So the piece, and I should have probably put equity regulation and task force as an overarching umbrella, because a lot of this is the conversations about equity. The board has adopted an equity policy, and as superintendent, you've charged me with putting together a task force to develop the regulations and our practices and our thinking around this work. And so that gets into the school enrollment attendance boundary piece, where we've heard concerns about diversity, particularly the socioeconomic and racial diversity, our 2 primary diversity issues here. Our English language learners are growing, with Spanish being the primary language. It's growing, but it's in pockets, and so we have some schools that almost have 0 students who are English language learners, and others who have large populations. So the whole equity piece will begin to inform a lot of our thinking, and what does that look like? We've done presentations on special education, and we've talked about special education. And so I put it there as a single bullet, but there are specific areas we want to, over time, begin to address where we are. Obviously, it's the quality of programming and the results of programming. We know we have to improve the outcomes for our students with disabilities, but that's not solely about special education. That's about the interface of general education and the support system for special education, and how do we do that well. And so, and looking at our service delivery system. So that's the thinking under special education. Under student services, we've talked about, we've had a report on the tribunal. We continue to have, I'll say me, I have concerns about the tribunal process. The theory of due process for students, I'm 100% on board. I'm just not sure we're affecting that in a way that's not so burdensome on families and schools, and what that looks like. And I still think there's work to be done there. There's still, I think, some conversations we can have as a governance team around philosophy of discipline, and beyond the philosophy of discipline, the philosophy of education for students who are facing significant disciplinary consequences. You know, I look at situations where we have students who may be expelled, and that means they are technically not eligible for any academic services. But is that our long-term approach to it? Understanding fully they don't need to be in our comprehensive schools, but is that the place where we want to be long-term? So some of my thinking. And then facilities. You know, next fall this time we'll be moving into Larchmont and Ocean View, and praying that construction will be well underway for Camp Allen, because that's caught between the PPEA process and the federal government. But we have to talk about some other things. You know, this board, or the total composition of the board, has talked about the Maury High School situation for a number of years. It's time for us to make a decision. We don't need to have a whole lot more conversation about it. We just simply need to decide, are we going to try to rehab it where it is? Do we want a new facility, because the school is landlocked with 9.8 acres, and when you go to the amount of rehab and perhaps addition or expansion that the community may be interested in, then we've got to get a bigger acreage of footprint, and how do we accomplish that? And so then we know we're looking at aging facilities of our other two high schools, Booker T and Lake Taylor High School. And, you know, and then in that boundary piece, I talked about the undersubscribed, under-enrolled schools. What would that mean for those middle schools? And so how do we look at all that comprehensively? And while we talk about our high schools, we have another number of elementary schools that need significant facilities work. And so, you know, how do we begin to approach that in a meaningful way? That, again, all of this will not come to fruition and closure in the 16-17 school year. Some of these pieces are multi-year expectations, but I think, again, if we start early enough with the conversations around where we are as a governance team and how we push these forward as we do the other things around teaching and learning, then we get to this effective system. So with that, that's my presentation, and certainly ready for discussion.
Yeah, so let me add, you know, as a board, we've talked over the last year. You know, we went through the superintendent search process, and there are some things that we addressed and probably some things we held off because we were waiting for the superintendent to arrive. As Dr. Boone said, she came in December, and we've all have just been running since then. And so now and this summer is really the first opportunity that we've had as a team to kind of focus on, you know, our vision, our strategic direction. We've talked about some data points that we like to receive, and so I think Dr. Boone has done a good job of framing areas for us to give some attention. But I just want to kind of open the floor for discussion, because we still have a strategic plan that we worked on, at least the overarching framework, and we identified some strategies there. You know, we need to, I think, have a conversation about what do we do with that? Do we build upon it and rebuild some of the other pieces to it? Do we gut it? But, our role in terms of setting that vision with the community of where we are and where we want to go. And then, also associated with that is, and Dr. Robinson is our longest serving board member, probably can express it, the frustration even more. But, a few days ago, I was in a conversation with the newspaper, and I was just describing how this year we said we were going to do some things a little bit differently in terms of having a retreat and having these meetings. And in the conversation, it came up how we have done things the past few years, and in my exposure and experience, I remember when the division would do some things a little bit differently, would have an organizational meeting, have a retreat. I was just going around searching. I saw they had one retreat in September. But I just feel like in my time on the board, we've struggled with what do we measure, what does success look like, and then how do we track that success along the way. And so in the conversations that I have with you all as individual board members, or we have collectively, it seems to me in a lot of the data requests that we're making is really trying to get at what does success look like, what do we see as where Norfolk Public Schools is right now, and then how do we use that information to determine what we want to do in the coming years, whether it's 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 1 year. So I just want to put that back out there as well, because I still think we need to figure out a way as a governance team to have conversations around, what does success look like and what do we prioritize, and how do we tie it within this framework or other areas that may be there that we feel need to be addressed. So I just wanted to put that out there because I've heard from you all, and I've shared that with Dr. Boone. So in addition to any questions that you have for her and what she's presented, if there are burning passions that you also like to put on the table in terms of areas of attention and focus, recognize we aren't going to be able to get to them all. But we said we're going to do this summer so that we could peel back the layers on the onion as much as we felt that it needed to be peeled back, and then use that information and what we decide to do as a team to address some issues moving forward. So, Ms. Messina, I saw you had your finger up, so.
And I'm smiling over here because you kind of hit some of the points that I wanted to make in terms of, I was reflecting back on not just this past year, but over the last few years and through the changeover that we've had with, different administrations and the work that we've done, with the strategic plan. And just as you've come in and seen, that there are different silos and groups, working independently of each other instead of seeing how they connect, I think that we have pieces in place like the strategic plan and that are also kind of, in their isolated positions, but now we need to kind of bring it together and see how, going forward, how we are going to tie it into the outcomes that we want to see for our students. So, I'd like to start talking about what we're going to do with the strategic plan and then tying that with our goals and objectives and making sure that what we are doing is measurable and that we can be as accountability driven as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Sure, so mine might be a little specific, but Dr. Boone, something that I wanted to applaud you for is that as I have been doing school visits and speaking with different folks in the community, some of our janitors and our nutrition workers, some folks that we may not always recognize or acknowledge, they have felt a difference within the building, a difference of appreciation, a difference of value. And I remember the comment that you had made about the janitor working at Nassau. What is his job? And he said that his job was to put a man on the moon. It wasn't to keep the facility nice and clean. And I think that I wanted to applaud you for that, because that was something that I've had numerous people come and say that you have made them feel valued and worthy to work for the division. along those lines, I think that we have a long way to go with climate and morale. And I think that we can start on that this year. We did put out a very, it was a brief climate survey that we did in addition to the very lengthy one that staff, students, and teachers participated in. But I think that we need to revisit what that smaller survey said. And I think we need to look at going forward, what are the results if we were to do the survey this year, and then use that as a possible litmus test or measurement in going forward. Because I do agree that stability is incredibly important, and the more that we can retain our highly qualified teachers who truly care about the students and the success of Norfolk Public Schools, that's critical, and they can teach us in moving forward. Along those lines, the mentors for our new principals. I know that Reverend Haywood speaks about that a lot, but as we do have new folks coming into the division, to make sure that we have a very, very strong support system in place for our new staff members, whether they're principals, whether they're teachers, whether they're serving as teacher aides, special education. And I'm sure that there are going to be many, many other topics that come up, but the climate and the morale, I believe, is critical. And you already addressed on student services with the tribunal process and our philosophy on discipline. So I think that those two areas would be very important and critical for me, in addition to the items that you had mentioned previously.
Ms. Doyle?
So, in looking at your focus areas, which I completely agree with, I think that we also want to really engage on the Regional Career Pathway Center and what that looks like in the near term for our division. And I know that comes into play with several of your bullets there listed, but I just wanted to surface that again. Another is, I know we have all talked about working more closely with City Council and meeting with them more in a more substantive fashion, now PowerPointing each other back and forth, and I know they agree with that also. I've spoken to several of the council members, as I know you all have as well. Many are going to come this afternoon to our swearing-in ceremony, and they're all very interested in engaging in real constructive dialogue. So I think we have an opportunity to work even better with them, and I think, Dr. Boone, your relationship with the city manager is instrumental, because there are going to be needs that we identify that are going to be outside of the budget that we're going to need their support on. And we need to help them understand what those are and what the benefits are, what the outcomes are, and what we measure our success by. Not just to say, hey, may we, but this is the intended outcome or the expected outcome or the optimal result we'll get from this. So working with City Council, no doubt, is one of the highest priorities I think that we should have. Personally, I think that we should continue to focus on our legislative agenda and be proactive this year with what is it that we want out of Richmond, and can we submit legislation that can support our division. And I know, Dr. Boone, you want to work with folks to do that as well. But I think it's been a few years since we've been a little bit more, it's been a few years since we've been proactive versus just responding to the kind of agenda brought forward on education. And then I know you're also working on alternative education. So I know that's not literally listed as a separate bullet, but I know that that's an area of focus for you.
The alternative education and the pay and comp study, both of those
Correct.
are underway. Well,
Yeah, and then
the
just
paperwork is underway for it.
Okay. And then two more things. One, I completely agree on the discipline issue within the schools. We've got to be very much focused on addressing the issue at all levels, elementary, middle, and high. And then I completely agree with the focus on literacy. I think we should become the city of reading. I think the division could be the focal point for that, to raise the literacy rates for all in the city, not just even for the division. If we look at ourselves as the focal point of improving reading for our own students, and then families and parents, et cetera, the ripple effects could be instrumental to the city. I think we need to think big about this and really focus on how this can improve the city as much as it can enhance the outcomes of the division. So I think those would be areas that I would really like to focus on as well.
Robson?
To piggyback off what Ms. Doyle said, is we have a perfect opportunity with Norfolk Public Library to partner with them and collaborate, because I think it's a wonderful idea that a rising tide will raise all boats. So if we can help not only the children, but their parents too. I think that's really critical in an urban area, so I'd like to see us move that forward. I appreciate your being proactive on the facilities and the schools. But we also need to look at our athletic facilities. We need to look at our playgrounds and fields and the shape they're in and how we can partner with the city to improve those facilities and make sure that we have top-notch and safe and for our children. I take a real personal view of working with the military and helping military families. We have a great cheerleader for Norfolk Public Schools at the city office with the military liaison. She's a close friend of our family. Our children grew up together, went to school together. Her kids graduated from Norfolk Public Schools, and she sees that as the best way to engage military families to want to move to Norfolk and stay in Norfolk when they leave the military by working on education. So I encourage us to continue those efforts. I applaud and encourage all the concepts and ideas that have been brought out here. Yes, I really would like to see that career pathway school push forward because that has been labeled as a game changer for our system and for our region. So I'd like to see us continue that. I'd like us to take a look at some more specific programs, some of our foreign languages and our arts programs. The buzz that I'm hearing around is not always positive. So I'd like us to, as a board, to make sure we oversee, not to get below the line, but to make sure that we create the opportunities and the policies to keep moving that forward, because school is more than just academics. We want to raise well-rounded children. I think there's a real problem with the over-testing, but that's, TBU, it's true but useless. We live in that age where we have to work on that, but if we can engage children to discover the love of learning, aided by the arts and foreign languages and things like that and other opportunities, it can only be a positive thing. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, look.
Yes, Dr. Boone, I'm certainly glad to see that you mentioned the equity regulation and task force. I think that's going to be one of the more important things that we do here at Norfolk Public Schools to solidify our policies and our approach to what will be equity here in Norfolk Public Schools. So thank you for including that. I also I would encourage the division to continue on the process of the PBIS instruments that we have developed and processes that we have developed. I believe that that's a long-term solution for school climate, in particular on the elementary and middle school level. I would like for the division to consider looking at how we will approach the high school levels with PBIS, whether it's going to be restorative justice, a combination of restorative justice and PBIS on the high school level. I know that these things take time to develop, and I hope that I didn't see that mentioned here, and I hope that that will be part of the process, part of the things that you will do this year here at Norfolk Public Schools. I thought that we had a good start with that. And too many of the things that we do get started and never come to full fruition. And so I'm speaking of this program with that in mind. Thank you.
Trying to have a conversation, so go ahead, Ms. Basine.
I would like to know more about this literacy committee and work group that you mentioned here, and if you can also elaborate, to get a little more into the specifics about what we're doing around literacy and what we're doing around math, especially in light of, some of the reductions that have taken place. If you can expand on that and what our plan actually is, that would be helpful.
Now or?
Yeah.
Well, I think I'll look at Dr. Rogers and Dr. Cataldo and ask them to join in the conversation with me. I think, again, while I didn't identify the core academic program as a specific area, that's what we're spending a great deal of time. We talked about the entire literacy focus. We'll remind the board that the reading and math specialists had only been in place 2 years. And they are not and have not been the sole source of support for many schools. So some schools have both specialists and interventionists. And so again, that is a support for literacy. It is not our literacy plan. And I think it's important to make a clear distinction between the two. Just as a textbook is not the curriculum, it is a resource to support the written curriculum. And so our approach initially has been, how do we build the capacity of our teachers and our principals to support literacy and numeracy in a way that we have a focus on how we do business. I think you all have heard me tell the story before that one of the reasons one of my children came to Norfolk Public Schools was because we were still teaching reading in the middle schools at that time. Now, I'm not one of those folks. I'm not declaring to be old enough that it got to go back to the way it had been. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying we have to, one of the things I hear from teachers, from principals, from parents, and others, is that we've got to address the literacy issues of our students across the board if we're ever going to have success. So I know the district, the pendulum has swung in the district that everybody became a reading teacher, almost at the detriment of the content that they were actually responsible for. I've said to the board, one of the reasons when we looked at the senior coordinator of English, we wanted someone who had a strong reading background to help us in this mindset, not at the detriment of English and writing and literature, because they are teacher specialists there to support that. But how do we get at the reading? So I wanted Dr. Rogers and Dr. Cataldo to kind of talk about the structures that we're put in place and how we're looking at it and how we're thinking about our partnering with William & Mary as a possibility to even advance this.
But before they go, can I just
You
add
chat.
something? Just in response and maybe in context of this. So, as a board and as a governance team, I still feel like we have to figure out, what does success look like? And I think we have a tendency at times, like we're getting ready to get a presentation on something, and we will get drawn into focus and the discussion and attention on whatever that something is. And I know it's always good something. But in terms of us being able to elevate up and saying, what is it? If we feel that there's a literacy or numeracy challenge, like Ms. Doyle, I thought had the great idea of being a literacy center, but how do you define it and measure it and then, let the administration go and implement it? And I think at times for our lack of focus as a board of really defining what we believe success should look like for Norfolk Public Schools, we then will get presentations and then we will get focused on the discussion of the implementation of literacy teachers, or we'll get pulled into the implementation of is PBS at this school, and we start having conversations around programs, but I'm not sure we ever set a clear vision and measure around what is it that we're trying to achieve and what does that look like. So as we have these presentations, I just think it's important for us as a board to not lose sight of that this summer as we work on it, that as we go into September, that hopefully we can come out with some clear vision and measures and and it's clear not only to us, but it's clear to the entire community what it is the success looks like for Norfolk Public Schools, whether it's in these areas or a few other areas, and not just end up with this, buffet approach where we all just talk about everything that's a little bit important to us and we give a little attention to that, but we never get to that big picture of, what's a satisfying meal. Ms. Doyle.
So I think an example of that could be, as a city of Reading, we could measure that by, within our school division, our reading SOLs, our writing SOLs. We could measure it by the literacy rate in the city of Norfolk, and is that improving overall as we do a ripple effect of improving the literacy of parents, family members, et cetera, as we partner with the William & Marys, the Slovers, the business community, to become this hub of reading. And I say reading loosely, I mean global, right? But there are rates that are known now of literacy in Norfolk. There are scores in our division. So we have measures that we can look to and say, this is our baseline. We'll implement this programmatic effort with these partners in this structure, and this is our goal outcome, and this is how we'll measure it along the way. It's not going to happen in a year, but in 5 years, and we'll see incremental growth over the 5.
No, I agree with you 100%. I just want to
So
put that out there, and because they know I'm always begging, and I'm going to beg again, because I feel that, like I had gone up and pulled up this plan version from 7 years ago, and you look at in that plan, and they had, by grade level, I don't know what the Gates average comprehension extended scale score was or is, but at least it was something that was measurable, okay? And it was broken down by reading on grade from K through 9. They also had promotion rates K through 12. So the mere fact that there was something that the team came together and agreed upon and measured it, then at least you know where you are today and where we're going to tomorrow. And so I just, as we spend this time together over these next several weeks, that we can really look at that data as appropriate and see where we are, and then be able to to marry it to the goals that we set. Renee?
I appreciate the fact that Dr. Broom brought to us an entry plan update, what she's going to be doing going forward, and her strategic vision. And so we were responding to that.
Oh, yeah.
That was our response to those things. And I think this is a healthy discussion about those things.
As I'm listening to everybody talk, I have to go back again to what our division priorities are. And then, because a lot of us are feeling the same way about a lot of the issues that we want to have discussed and measured and resulted and build upon. So I think that, we're going to plan, let's look at our priorities. Let's look and see if they still are our same priorities, and is there anything that we want to change collectively as a board?
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm just going to add that I'm asking that question about what our strategy is, because we know it's not that we have no data and we are not knowledgeable of what the data is. We know that we have challenges in literacy and math at almost every grade level. Yes, we are making improvements and gains in those areas, but we already know that. So now I am asking what our strategy is going to be, and I think it's our rightful place to ask that question, so that we know when we do, what is our endpoint. And so I think we need to also keep that in mind, that is,
Oh, no, I agree with you. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
yeah.
the reason we're having the discussion. My only point was that at some point we have to baseline or benchmark something.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I think we have
then
that,
we get-
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
We do.
Well, to
have
the
a
extent
lot
that
of
we
it.
have it,
yeah.
to have it centralized and clear, and everybody knows what it is and where it is and where we're going. I think at different levels, we all feel, different knowledge.
Right.
I couldn't tell you. If you ask me right now, where are we in terms of, literacy, fluency, whatever the appropriate terminology is, by grade level, by school as a division, I couldn't tell you what it is, and I couldn't tell you where to go get it. And I'm just simply saying that as we do this work, I think it's important that we know what it is, and everybody knows what it is. We're all on the same page with that. We know where to get it, and then as we have our meetings going forward, then we always have that in front of us as we have these discussions. But Dr. Boone?
Well, I was going to ask my colleagues to share some information on what we're doing, particularly with the literacy piece.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Ms. Basine. So just to recap, as you all may recall, back in the fall, we had discussions about having a K-12 literacy model. And what we did was we started with a steering committee of about 40 staff members all throughout the course of the city, which is comprised of teachers, administrators, reading specialists, as well as central office staff. So we had a day-long meeting, and what came out as a result of that meeting is what our needs were. The data told us that we had a reading problem, particularly in the area of third grade. What came as a result of that conversation, as well as conversations with our principals and assistant principals, as well as teachers, is that it's not just a third grade reading issue. It's a pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade reading problem that we need to address as a whole. So one of the outcomes of those meetings and that time with those staff members was the need to have professional development that centered around balanced literacy, which begat our professional development with HMH, which Holt Mifflin Harcourt, with guided reading and building capacity as well as teacher efficacy. As you very well know, you keep teachers when they feel successful with the work that they're doing. So we took it from that approach and are continuing on that work with building teacher capacity with professional development. As Dr. Boone mentioned earlier, we will certainly continue that work with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers as well. Now, I'm excited to have Dr. Cataldo on the team because he has been charged with continuing that work with the Literacy Model Steering Committee as well as the larger committee as a whole to begin talking about what our actually birth to 12 literacy model, which is in keeping with your City of Reading philosophy, will look like for the city of Norfolk. So we're excited about that. He has already been in contact with some staff members at the College of William and Mary, particularly through CERN. As Dr. Boone shared, we've already had conversations, and we had a 2-day meeting at CERN just a couple of weeks ago where we had members of our principal team, both elementary and middle, and not high school because they were in the middle of graduation, but they've certainly been invited to participate on that committee. So we are certainly continuing our work with that and with the plan of, in addition to having our birth to 12 literacy model, but also taking a look at the curriculum that we have and doing an audit. Dr. Boone mentioned that when she first came on board in terms of wanting to do a curriculum audit, particularly in the area of English, but also to span the scope of the other content areas as well. So I'd like Dr. Cataldo to share a little bit about the conversations that he's had with the members of CERN.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Chairman Jordan, Dr. Boone, members of the board. The conversation I've had with CERN have been in discussing coming to our division, doing an audit, and really looking to see what it is that we're doing, looking at our curriculum, looking at our assessments, and determining from that analysis, are we hitting the areas that we need to hit? We can look at the data, we can look at the SOL scores, and we can see the final outcome. But we have to really look at the curricular part. We have to look at the instructional part too. Curriculum instruction primarily is going to be focusing on the professional development, teaching teachers how to teach specific areas. Just because a teacher graduates and becomes a teacher doesn't necessarily mean they will have all those skills that we can definitely work with and impart in them, so then they can pass that knowledge on and work with the students. So that's a big part and the big focus. So we're really looking first primarily at the developing the audit part of it and analyzing exactly what we're doing to make sure, because if our teachers are hitting the right areas, if those areas are not the ones that are aligned, then we're missing the mark too.
And I hope the board hears the true message in what both Dr. Rogers and Dr. Cataldo are saying. One of the things I prefer not to do is to go after something because we've identified a problem and then we start doing things. I'm a systems thinker. So in order for us to understand what our true literacy needs are, we knew we needed guided reading. We knew the balance. We heard that over and over again. Teacher said that really helped us. I'm ready to go again. I used some things this spring and developing some other things for the fall. but being a systems thinker, what's the story behind the numbers? And that's what Dr. Cataldo was saying. We can look at the summative scores or the SOL scores or whatever else, but what does that tell us? We can look at the strands within the assessment, and we can get a little bit closer. But what does that mean for how we have focused our literacy efforts over time? And we have to, and that's the challenge I think we have when we're trying to turn around a district or trying to turn around a school. The sense of urgency is we've got to do it now, so we immediately go jump into now. And then respectfully, then we got to weed the garden and get rid of some things, and that's kind of what we've been doing. And so for us, if we're going to do this well, you all know I'm into systemic change. If we're going to do this well, we have to know what we're doing well, where our gaps are, and then we engage our teachers, our principals, and others in those conversations so everybody understands what's going on. It's not that story here, well, downtown told me I had to do that. Because we'll often hear that, and we'll say, okay, and then I hear from downtown, well, the state said we had to do that. Well, we're going to be doing this because we know that the data reflect what needs to happen with literacy. Same reason, you know, we're doing a pay and comp study. You remember when we talked about that? I could say to the board, oh yes, we need to do, let's raise salaries 10% over the next 3 years, and we could still be behind if we don't understand where the current and future market will be. And so it's important for us to do those types of studies so we have informed, we're informed as we make decisions about how do we phase in that, or what are our belief system, what are the assumptions that we buy into from those types of studies. Same thing with the alternative education piece. It's going to look at facilities, it's going to look at our programs. All of that is part of what's happening, and so the literacy audit is a significant piece of how we know what we know.
Right, and I'll kind of remind the board as well, back in the fall, I think there was a convention or conference in Richmond, and you all met one of my former colleagues in the school division where I worked with before, and we talked about the literacy model that we did there. So the next phase of collecting information would be to hold focus groups with our students as well as our parents to gather information at all elementary, middle, and high school levels with regards to their experiences with literacy, good, bad, and indifferent, and build upon those experiences, as Dr. Boone shared earlier, to capitalize on what's working well, because all of our schools are not struggling, and we do have certainly pockets of innovation and excellence that we certainly need to capitalize on, and that will be the goal of the committee.
Any other questions, Ms. Bassi?
Another addition that I want to be sure that I'm sure is, I know this is your short list of your long list, but I want to make sure too that we are addressing gifted education as part of it, especially as we talk about equity. That's included in the equity plan as well, or not plan, but we talked about that in the framework. But I just want to be sure that we, you know, you reminded me, as you said, there are pockets of excellence. And when we talk about that, historically, you know, we sometimes fall into a pattern of saying, but they're okay. Are we moving them from being excellent to, you know, really superior, going beyond what they're capable of? Sometimes we miss that. So just want to be sure that that's what reminded me that, that we don't overlook the gifted student population also.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Dr. Boone, anything else? Because otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item.
No, just one thought, one observation, and then, you know, as I pulled up while we were sitting here again, the board and division priorities, and as we talk about where we with the strategic plan, I've said to the board, you know, the general priorities and the goals and focus, I'm good with. I mean, because they're pretty much what we need to do. And, you know, I asked the board if I could take some strategic action, and so hopefully that's what I've been able to accomplish in these 7 months and as we go forward. But as we continue to have this conversation, I want us to look at the board priorities. I recognize that school accreditation is our public face, but I hope in time we'll lead and reprioritize our priority so that accreditation is not the first thing that we're seeking, but rather to increase the academic achievement of all students. Because that's really what we should be about. And when we put the students at the center of the conversation, we'll get those outcomes if we focus on that. If we focus on the numbers, we can get those too, but we're going to constantly be chasing them. But, so that's one of those things that I wanted to mention. And I'm excited about being here, but, you know, it was interesting coming in the middle of a school year. And I feel like now we got the reins and we can really have the conversations that we've been touching around the fringes or kind of chasing in these 7 months so that we could get to this point. And I'm honestly looking forward to the courageous conversations we're going to have and the very focused conversations we'll have about what it takes to define success and achieve the results that our students are capable of and this community expects.
Well said and good closing.
Thank you.
So we will continue. As I mentioned earlier, we've already agreed that we're prepared to roll up our sleeves and put forward the effort that we need to in order to come out this summer with that clear vision and including any revisions to what we've adopted in the past. So again, I just thank Dr. Boone for your first 7 months. And the board for hanging in there. We have a great opportunity now, and really don't have any other choice but to make sure that we do this work on behalf of our children. With that, I'm going to move on to our school board policy review agenda item. The first thing that you see on board docs is the advisory committee update. Just want to let the board know again that the policy committee met, and you'll hear from Dr. Birdsong and others about the other items that are on the agenda. But we have drafted a letter that we're sending out to all those who have submitted applications to be a part of the committee. It's still our goal, as we talked about earlier, is to have those committees or as many of those committees in place as possible before the start of the school year. Ms. Banks forwarded to me all of the applications that we received. I'm going to be forwarding that on to the board because just as a reminder, the advisory committees are really for the board to finalize and adopt who are going to be the members of those advisory committees, with the explicit exception of the Student Health Committee, where the superintendent is making those appointments. So we are going to work through that process this summer. Again, we know that our process is calling for multiple avenues for citizens who want to participate. We know many of our existing committees have submitted to us for consideration recommendations from vetting that they've done and work that they've considered in terms of trying to make sure in some cases that individuals have had an opportunity to watch their committees work and have a familiarity with the work and therefore be able to be integrated successfully. In other cases, we have the applications that we receive from the internet. We also have individuals that come before us at school board meetings, or for that matter, informally, and just share with us that they would like to serve on a variety of different committees. And of course, as school board members, you may have individuals that you want to recommend. So part of what the next steps will involve is providing to the board an update on vacancies that we have, the terms that we have, and then, as I mentioned earlier, sharing with you the applications that we've received. That letter will go out just to let all those that applied earlier in the year that we do have your application. We haven't dropped it. We are still engaged with it, and we're working through that process. And then by the time we get to August, be in a position where, as a board, we can go ahead and get on our business meeting those recommendations, and then welcome those individuals into the committee and have them up and running and functioning come the school year. Any questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas about that approach? Ms. Basine?
I just want to be sure I'm clear. So when we talked about this a couple months ago, and based on the way the application process was announced and went out, So board members, if we have a recommendation to make, is it okay to go ahead and submit those recommendations, or do you want us to wait for the vacancies
Well, I'll
to be
say,
shared?
let me get to you all what
Okay.
we've received, and then also let you see where the vacancies are, and then we'll work through that as we, make our final decision. Dr. Gabriel?
So will we be expected to vote on the policy update at our next meeting?
So we did the policy. What we were working on is the revision of the regulation that
Okay.
explains that process.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we would have to do both those things. One, update the regulation, and then two, also go through the process of making that selection.
Okay.
Anything else on the advisory committee update? All right, with that, Dr. Boone, may we welcome Dr. Birdsong up to the podium.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jordan, Dr. Gabriel, members of the board. You have before you this afternoon a variety of policies that we received from the VSBA during their May update. You should have had an opportunity to review the administration's recommendations. At this time, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have about any of those policies.
Remind the board again that because we subscribe to the VSBA policy service, whenever they affect recommended changes and revisions to policy based on General Assembly action or other requirements, they then pretty much forward those to us in a bundle of 2 or 3 times a year. And so that's why you see so many.
Ms. Doyle?
So will more be coming our way as a result of July 1 legislative changes taking place from the General Assembly as well?
Yes, and the VSBA will be in contact with us
Okay, so this,
for all of those updates. These are the updates from May that should go in effect for July 1.
okay. Thank you.
Dr. Gabriel?
Most of the regulations that I saw were legal changes.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we did in the first one under BBFA, the conflict of interest and disclosure of economics. We discussed that and went through that and did our own update, and then there were a couple of additional additions that were made. You'll see that there are also, right now we have out for comment and review our regulations associated with facilities, and so we are holding on to that so that first we can get continued feedback from stakeholders on the work that's already has been done by the administration. And then once we get that feedback and any additional feedback that we get from VSBA, we would then integrate those things if necessary, and then bring that forward to the board for a vote. Was there another that we may have also pulled or updated? I know the facilities was one. Oh, I know the other was the comments, citizens' comments to the board. Since we had just gone through all of that, we made sure that any changes that they had was already implemented or integrated into the work that we did. So I think that was the other one.
Policy BDDH?
Yes.
Yes.
That we also looked at. Anything else from Reverend Haywood, Ms. Banks, Dr. Birdsong from the committee's perspective?
No, we did pull a few of the academic policies that we are still reviewing, and we should have those to you for the next session.
Any questions or comments on any of the policies? Otherwise, they'll end up appearing on our next consent agenda for our business meeting on the 20th.
That is correct.
Dr. Robinson.
This is a comment on one of the policies. There's really nothing that we can do about it, but it is policy JJAC, student athlete concussions during extracurricular activities. The way it is written is discriminatory against a class of healthcare providers. Doctors of chiropractic have a comparable education to medical physicians and osteopaths, much greater than physical PAs or trainers. We're trained in neurological evaluation, all systems evaluations. In fact, I testified in front of the Department of Health Professionals 2 weeks ago concerning this issue. So I just want to have it on record that and I know there's nothing the school division can do about it. We're just following what state regulations. But it is a discriminatory policy.
Well, I was going to ask Attorney Cloud, in that particular regulation, you know, it ends with the school division does not enforce compliance with the policy or guidelines by such organizations. Is it the case that, and Dr. Robinson, you can chime in since you know more about it, are you saying that the state law prohibits us from including that?
Yes, the way the law is written, the code of Virginia is written. It's very limiting on what doctors of chiropractic can do.
Okay.
So it limits their ability to do these kind of evaluations, even though we're trained in it.
Dr. Boone?
Well, I was just going to comment on Ms. Doyle's recommendation earlier around legislative items. While that may be the case now, and again, I know the lobbying forces, but I think, again, that sends a very clear message with your background that that's something we may want to include in our legislative package for reconsideration.
That would, I would appreciate that. I don't know if we want to spend the political capital doing that, fighting this battle. It was more of a public statement, anything else. And I'm very appreciative of that fact. But it would require a change in the language in the health professionals legislation. I mean, that's a major undertaking. We're trying to do, but again.
Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I understand, I think the context of it is being able to have more qualified and certified individuals who could provide these services on behalf of our students, and that's that's what we do. So, any others? Any other comments at this point in time on policies? Policies that any recommendations that need to go to the committee for consideration at this time that any board members have that they want us to look at? Dr. Gabriel?
You ask.
Yes.
I just want to know where we are with our bring our own device policy.
That we're supposed to be going into the next steps of that in the fall. And so Dr. Lands and we will provide the board a specific update of where we are and what happened with our spring pilot.
Okay.
We'll get that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Birdsong.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, additional matters of the board. Two things that we have there, the superintendent and clerk evaluation process. One of the reasons that Dr. Boone gave us this earlier presentation on her entry plan was to also give the board an update on that work. She is completing the detailed version of the entry plan. You'd like to speak to that, Dr. Boone?
Yes, the next steps that I want to take the entry plan and the 7 months of actions and align it with the 7 standards for the superintendent's evaluation to show, where the work has aligned with those standards, as well as the piece on the superintendent professional development wasn't part of the entry plan, and yet I have information on that and places of continued growth. So we'll be getting that also to the board.
And then likewise, we mentioned earlier when we passed or reaffirmed Ms. Banks as our clerk, you all recall that, Ms. Basine, you were new to the board. You weren't on the board at the time, but it was 2014, maybe 2015, when the superintendent at that time came forward and we updated the job description and responsibilities of the board clerk. So we know that the superintendent has the responsibility for the day-to-day management of the clerk. What I think we need to do is provide our feedback back to her and let her include that in her work and evaluation with the clerk, and then come back to us with her final review. What I'm going to do is send to you what I did receive from Ms. Banks for the evaluations that she had in the past, and then also we'll resend the document, at least as we have it now, of the duties and job description, pending any updates that we may receive from the administration in that regard. And then I think we should set a goal of trying to, I don't know if we can get it done by the 20th meeting, Dr. Boone, but I think at least by the August business meeting, we need to have that complete.
If we could set a time frame that's reasonable for the board, and I don't know if there's a specific form to be used or a template to use for the board to provide information to me to be used in the evaluation. If we could set 2 timelines, we certainly would be ready for the August evaluation, but if we can have a date by which the board would provide any input to me, and I'm fine to receive it as just a general message.
Yeah.
That
Well, maybe
or
what
written memo.
maybe what we can do is if you and Dr. Billups get together, and if there's some
Okay.
whatever form you all use, we could use that, and then if you get that to us, then I would say by the 20th, if we have our comments back to you by the 20th, then that gives you, plenty of time to complete that process.
Okay.
Does that work for everyone? Ms. Banks, you too, so, of course. So those were the 2 items that we had. I was going to ask if there's other. Ms. Doyle?
So when is the timing for Dr. Boone's evaluation per se?
Well, originally, we were trying to get her initial piece to us by the 30th. She's requested additional time. So
Okay.
when can you have your document to us?
I can have the next document to you by the 20th.
Okay. So why don't we just operate on the same schedule for both?
Okay.
And I
That's
think that
good.
would allow us to
Perfect.
get that done. And as we talked about the previous meeting, because we have the other work that we touched on earlier aligning with that, then when we set the goals and indicators and measures for the new year, for the superintendent's performance as well as our performance as a division, we should be at a point where we can also include those in the performance goals for the upcoming school year.
So would that take place on August 17th or on the 3rd?
Yes. The
17th?
business meeting. So
Business-
we would have it complete by the business meeting
Okay. Very good.
for the performance review, whatever we need for the superintendent's review. So one step is evaluating what the performance has been from December to date. The other step associated with that is setting the goals and objectives for the upcoming year.
And that happens concurrently on the 17th?
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. Any questions, comments on that? Any other matters of the board that at this time? Well, Dr. Gabriel, you want to give us an update on what's happening with the swearing in that you and Ms. Banks have been working on?
Well, it is going to be a very lovely event that's open to the public, and we surely hope that the public is going to join us. As Dr. Boone said earlier, NPS a while ago left the community, but the community never left us, and we want to make sure that the community is very much a part of this process, as it was the first election in a very, very long time. So at 6 o'clock, the program will begin, and it's going to be short, followed by a reception in the Commons area of Granby High School. Hopefully the sun is shining right now, and we won't have any thunderstorms, but that's what the plan is going to be.
So the swearing in takes place outside.
The swearing-in ceremony will be outside on the steps of Granby High School, and then we will proceed to the Commons area for a reception.
And in addition to the 2 of us, the student representative is also being sworn in?
Yes, so we, as you all know, we are one of the first boards to have a student member on the school board, and in fashion with our swearing in, we wanted to have him sworn in as well. So he will be sworn in.
All right. Anything else anyone want to bring up at this time? Let me go back. Ms. Doyle mentioned working with the city council in our meetings. I've had ongoing conversations with the mayor. In the document that we shared at the last meeting, we were looking at maybe a September timeframe. I'm still of the mind that I was before, that I think we should host a meeting. And as we work on our board governance training and other things over the summer, I think it's important that we get an opportunity to communicate in that conversation with council, clearly what our role is as a governance team, what the superintendent's role is, and what their role is. And so in conversations just with the mayor and some others, we've talked about that and trying to make sure that it's understood in terms of their support role and partnering role. But just as we know, we have ethics and codes and governance principles that say that school board members don't micromanage the superintendent and micromanage the schools. I think it's important that we be able to communicate, our code and our goals and our objectives to council. I think for so long it's been different. I just think we have opportunity to set a new tone and have some real clarity moving forward. There was also some discussion going around with council committees, because I guess they'll work through however they will do committees. We also have to do the same thing. And so I'll just ask the board to think about, do we want to establish new committees that we think maybe would help us in doing our work, or do we, there's some conversation about being a committee of one. But I do think that's something else we need to talk about, whether it's accountability. As we've gone to different conferences, we've seen where different divisions have had accountability committees on the board and other structures. So just want to put that out there for some thought and consideration as well. And Ms. Basine?
I wonder if we can also think about talking about our board engagement with the community. At some point, we don't have to talk about it right now, but I would like us to put that on our agenda at some point. I've had a really good experience, new experience with the office hours that I've done this year. And, would like the opportunity to share what I've learned there, and perhaps, if there's interest in other board members doing it as well, or having, whether it be listening sessions or other things that we could do. Because as Dr. Boone said, the community has left us, I think, has become disengaged, or vice versa. We left the community, yes, vice versa, sorry. And as I said it, I was like, wait, they want us to be engaged. So I think, I would like to have that conversation at some point, so. Yeah.
Hopefully, Dr. Boone was speaking from a lead administration perspective. I like to think that as school board members who are out there, conversations in grocery stores and football games and everywhere we go, to my knowledge, I think that I don't think we ever left. But one of the things that we did leave on the table last year that we can revisit this year, we gave some look at a family and community engagement policy. And I know, Dr. Boone, you had some thoughts about that as well, making sure that it was just not something in style, but had some substance to it. But I think that's something else we need to revisit this year in trying to codify, from the board throughout the division, what does community and family engagement look like? And Dr. Robinson, you've always spoken about, customer service and what that looks like. So I know that's something that we already have, but I don't want us to lose sight of that, and hopefully trying to nail down before the school year opens.
But I think to think on a broader scale is to then take what we're hearing anecdotally and trying to capture a more representative
perspective.
Feedback, yeah, like if we're hearing, from a grocery store in this part of Norfolk, how do we capture whether that is truly going on in other parts, and kind of infusing what we're hearing, and really truly hearing and listening to what people are saying, and putting that, into our surveys, and making our surveys really meaningful, and using that data to, impact change in our division. So I think it's something I'd like to see us talk more about in the upcoming year.
Dr. Robinson?
Well, it's the power of the question and who you're asking the question of. If you're asking a question of business leaders, they've got information that they can provide and that they need, versus parents of children that are school age, versus retirees that don't have any kids in the school division anymore. The military, it can be a daunting thing, but I like the idea of listening more and getting more feedback from the public. I look forward to hearing about your experiences doing that, because I think that's very powerful two ways. Number one, we get information from the individuals, what's going on out in the community, and we can pass that on to the administration to incorporate. And we can use that as a vehicle to let people know what we're doing, what our limitations are, what our aspirations are, what our programs are. Because again, my kids went through the school system. We didn't know half of the programs that were available to our children. I would have probably made different educational choices based upon that. So I think that if we can ramp that up, I think that's going to help everybody around.
And I think it helps our communication strategy, because you realize, the community doesn't know that we have this policy in place, or that policy in place, or this program. And so it's an opportunity to say, you know what, I think there's a gap, or there's something, this has not been communicated in the right way to the community, and maybe if they knew about it, that we would have a different response to the situation, so I think it's really important, so.
Yeah, and on that, I think it's also important that we are intentional about being inclusive in our listening, and understanding that different individuals or families or groups bring different cultural approaches. I mean, personally, while I've would advocate from a system-wide perspective, long before being on the school board, I'm also the type of parent where, I guess just from my own upbringing, my tendency was to trust the teacher. So I may challenge the school board on certain things, but typically when I was sitting there working with the teacher, I was leaning on the teacher to help guide me and what my support role could be in their efforts to try to improve the outcomes for my children. So there are those who are very trusting. There are those who are very skeptical. There are those who are very vocal. There are those who will say absolutely nothing, but that doesn't mean that they don't care. And so I think we have to make sure that we balance that out and not get too skewed in any one direction, as we have those types of conversations. With that, anything else? All right, so we will consider ourselves adjourned. And what time are we to? All right, so what time should we gather?
5:45.
5:45. Okay. Consider this meeting adjourned.